Speaker, I'm pleased to rise on behalf of the right all along people of Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke. I'd like to begin by congratulating my Liberal colleagues on their resilience to be able to eat such a huge slice of humble pie and not choke on their own hypocrisy is impressive. Nearly half this omnibus budget bill is just repealing Trudeau-era policies. For my colleagues across the aisle to have to admit to being wrong about so much without showing a single sign of humility really speaks to the resilience of the Liberal arrogance. They admit they were wrong about the consumer carbon tax, the boat tax, the digital services tax, the capital gains tax, and more. Yet they still swagger into this chamber with the absolute confidence that this time they're right. This time they know what's best for Canada's economy. And based on that 600-page budget implementation bill, what the Prime Minister thinks is best are massive piles of corporate welfare. Here's one example from page 3 of the budget bill. Quote, providing a refundable investment tax credit to qualifying corporations and trusts for investments in certain clean electricity property, end quote. If any Canadians watching are wondering who the biggest investor in clean electricity is, I'll give you a hint. It starts with Brook and ends with Field. Last year, the clean electricity tax credit cost the Treasury $22 million. This year, the tax credit will cost $1.5 billion. Next year, it will cost $3.8 billion. And by 2028, the government projects it will cost $7.2 billion. That's 328 times what it cost last year for just one tax credit. That will mostly flow to one company, Brookfield. But wait, there's more. Take the Canada Infrastructure Bank. This budget is giving it $15 billion more. Maybe it's just a coincidence that the clerk of the Privy Council was the former head of the Infrastructure Bank. They're increasing the funding despite its failure to achieve its goal of using public money to attract private investment. Now, we know the bank failed because the government keeps on telling us it failed. Every Liberal budget has acknowledged the lack of private investment and the damage it's doing to our productivity. The Infrastructure Bank failed so spectacularly that the Liberals created the Canada Growth Fund with the identical mandate of using public money to attract private investment. Now, in an act of corporate synergy that would make Mackenzie proud, the Brookfield government is leveraging the Canada Growth Fund to catalyze the Clean Electricity Fund. In plain human language, they're giving companies, such as Brookfield, cash handouts from the Growth Fund, then allowing the companies to get tax credits for the spending handouts. Companies like Brookfield will get a shiny new asset to put on their balance sheet and a little spending money on the side. Wow. Canadians get a bigger tax bill and higher electricity prices. Now, I don't need a crystal ball to tell you this is going to fail to increase economic productivity. It won't leverage or catalyze or spur any private investment. It will destroy private investment. If there was a real business case, it wouldn't need subsidies. That means any investment it attracts comes at the expense of real opportunities for growth. That's just not a fact, it's a basic physical reality. The Brookfield government can try to ignore reality, but eventually it'll hit you like a freight train. Unfortunately, for anyone who owns property between Quebec City and Toronto, this government plans to hit you with a high-speed train. Justin Trudeau launched the largest expropriation of private property in Canadian history with his gun grab. Now, even that legacy isn't safe. Buried in this budget bill is the biggest land grab in a century. Canadians might be shocked to learn that when this bill passes, the high-speed rail line from Quebec City to Toronto will be automatically approved. They don't know where the rail line will be built, but it's already approved. If your home is in the way, they'll expropriate it. They just need to delete sections 8 through 12 of the Expropriation Act to get it done. In fact, they're so confident that in pre-approving the rail line without knowing the actual route that the government is amending the Transportation Act to remove the ability of the government to amend the approval. I want to remind Canadians that half this bill is the government repealing decisions made by the Liberal government. Now they want to tie their hands to prevent any future government from correcting this mistake. There is a big difference between cutting red tape and throwing all the tape out the window. And if any of this sounds out of character from the tape-happy Liberal Party, don't worry. They return to form on the next page of the legislation. Again, with this bill, the entire speed rail line is approved automatically and without an actual route. Then this bill states that the entire rail line is exempt from the dreaded unconstitutional Impact Assessment Act. However, each segment of the rail line is subject to the Impact Assessment Act. We can see where this is going because we've seen it all before. Once they determine the route, they will begin expropriating the land. Then they'll find a turtle or a frog on the land. The activists and proud socialists will demand the Liberals adjust the segment of the line. If it's a Liberal riding, the line will move. If it's a Conservative riding, they'll plow through. In the end, the government will have to take some other people's land, and those who were needlessly expropriated will just have to watch from the sidelines. For a while now, I've wondered how this government was going to hit the ridiculous target of restoring 30% of Canada's developed lands to nature by 2030. One way would be to cut a straight line through the most developed and expensive lands in Canada, claiming it is for high-speed rail, then killing the entire project by blaming some turtles trying to win the Darwin Prize. But, Mr. Speaker, I said earlier, I don't need a crystal ball because I have a history book. We've seen this all before. In 1972, Pierre Trudeau expropriated farmland in Pickering to build an airport. By 1975, the airport plan was on hold. The government kept the land and in January of this year announced there would be no airport, but the lands would go to Parks Canada to be included in the Rouge National Park. This bill makes the Pickering land grab look like a picnic. This budget gives the unnamed rail corporation the power to issue stop work orders on any land it thinks it may need for the rail line. And once it puts your property on the maybe list, it'll have the first right of refusal for any sale. The rail corporation will have the right to issue stop work orders on any activity on your land, and the corporation will have the right to go onto your property at any time to ensure the work has stopped. In a normal expropriation, you receive a notice of intent. Then you have the option to object and a public hearing is held. Now, you'll receive the notice and still be able to object, but there will be no hearing. And the final decision will be made by the minister behind closed doors. Now, some Canadians listening to all this will think it has the makings of a Second Pacific railway scandal. And that would be delicious irony to fall on the party that gleefully tossed Sir John A. Macdonald down the memory hole. But erasing history has its consequences. If one of those consequences is the Liberals sleepwalking into another sponsorship-sized scandal, then I'm sure Sir John A. is smiling down on us. And while I would relish the Liberals paying a steep price for their arrogance, we also know from history what happens. They'll just walk off into the sunset of a corner office in a fancy law firm or a boardroom. It'll be Canadians who are forced to pay the higher taxes to the bondholders. It'll be Canadians who are forced off their lands during a housing crisis. It'll be Canadians who lose the farm their family owned for generations. When Liberals promise you a generational change, hide your wallets and lock your doors. This budget cuts benefits to veterans and students. It lays off frontline workers. All that plus billions in new debt for the biggest corporate welfare spending spree in history. The Mackenzie King government ran up deficits to fight the Nazis. The Harper government ran up deficits to fight the global financial crisis. The Trudeau government ran up deficits to fight a global pandemic. This Brookfield government is running up deficits to reward its wealthy backers. Canadians can't afford this takeover of their democracy. We need an affordable Conservative government now.
Well done. Questions and comments. Question commentary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Speaker, it's really apparently very clear the Conservative Party and the leader of the Conservative Party truly do not understand what it means to invest in Canada, invest in Canadians. You know, they want to get rid of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. They call it a failure. They're going to get rid of it. They have no concept, Mr. Speaker. Did you know the Infrastructure Bank is responsible for literally tens of thousands of jobs? When you take a look at its projects that it's invested in, almost a 2-to-1 return ratio, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Yet the Conservatives stand back and say it doesn't exist. They're not aware of any projects. Do a simple Google search. Look on the internet. Investing in Canada is something in which Infrastructure Bank is done, just like this budget. I'm wondering if the member opposite would recognize that the Investment Bank...
Order. The honourable member for Algonquin Renfrew Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, this government does not know the difference between an investment and a purchase. It thinks buying a Lada is an investment. So if you take all the money that the Liberals have spent since they became government in 2015, when there was an actual surplus, and added it up, you'd be at our national debt, which is $1.266 trillion, $500 billion. And each household owes $77,256 per household. And any household that doesn't have the taxes to pay that back will be passed on to their children, including the students and children who may be in the galleries today. They'll be paying this debt that we're talking about today.
Questions and comments? Commentaire Lana.
The honourable member for Rimouski Metapedia. Thank you. I'd like to commend my colleague for her speech. I do agree with some things. The fact that the Liberal government currently is changing what an investment and a spending is in the dictionary. The government is camouflaging deficits by calling it something else. So they're trying to con people at the end of the day. They're trying to dupe Canadians. It's creative accounting. But my question is as follows. I don't understand the Conservative discourse. They said, we don't support the budget if the budget is more than $42 billion. But they're not criticising the government's policy on that, because this is a Conservative budget, cutting in the state, reducing the public service. 15,000 people might be fired. Historic military spending. Tax credits for oil and gas. $100 billion until 2040. That's as Conservative as it gets. It's so Conservative that some of the Conservatives are joining the Liberals. So what does she not like in this budgetary policy beyond deficits?
Algonquin Renfrew Pembroke.
Oh, I can tell you 600 pages of things I don't like in the budget implementation bill. But quite frankly, he was correct about something in the preamble of his question. He talked about the accounting practices, and this is what the Liberals have done is a perversion of quantitative easing. They're simply taking expenses and putting them in the investment or the asset column. That's cheating, and any other government would be taken to task and thrown out of office.
Question and comments. The honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question regarding the planned savings that this government is projecting. It says it'll save $48 billion over the next 5 years. Most analysts out there are suggesting this is wishful thinking. Over the past 10 years, this government has tried finding efficiencies and failed miserably. They have caused an affordability crisis never seen before. The question I have is, should Canadian voters believe their rosy projections this time around?
The honourable member for Algonquin Renfrew Pembroke in about 50 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think Canadians are believing it. I have older people who just can't pay the rent, can't pay the electricity bills now, and they're telling me that if this MAID bill goes through, that they're going to sign up because they're already depressed and they don't want to continue living this way. They would rather die than suffer the way this Liberal government has been making them suffer.